We're going to talk about the heavy rain and flood threat that we expect mainly tonight and tomorrow from a band of heavy rain. And so we'll talk first about the rainfall forecast and the flash flood threat, and then we'll end with some discussion of the river forecast as well. So overall, we're looking at a slow-moving band of moderate to heavy rain setting up tonight. There's the potential for up to a foot of rain in areas that have already seen significant rain. So we're talking about Matagorda and Jackson County up into Wharton County. And because of that additional rain and the saturated soils, we do see a flash flood threat for those areas and some others as well. There is some uncertainty in exactly where the band will set up, and that will play heavily into where the heavy rain falls. And so the counties that are adjacent to those I just mentioned also have a flash flood threat. And there is river flooding forecast, going to be very sensitive to the amount of rain that falls, and Katie will speak to that at the end. Here's a look at the flash flood watches in effect. All the counties in dark green have a flash flood watch that extends right through Friday to Friday evening. And you can see in our forecast area that includes Galveston, Brazoria, Fort Bend, Wharton, Matagorda, and Jackson counties. Wharton and Fort Bend were added this afternoon. It now looks like that heavy band will extend a little bit further inland. And we did have some debate about Colorado County. So if you're up in Colorado County, you're not out of the woods. Some of the models do have that heavy rain extending that far inland. So we'll have to keep an eye on Colorado as well. These maps here give you an idea where the heavy rain is expected to fall in 6-hour intervals. So this is based on a number of different models and sort of merging some of the common features in them. And what you can see, basically what I'm trying to show here, is these areas in purple and red and even some yellows are where you're getting rainfall amounts over a 6-hour period of sort of in that 3 to 5 inch range in these models. And so if you compare 7 p.m. to 1 a.m., 1 a.m. to 7 a.m., and even 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. tomorrow, generally falling in the same areas, right there around Matagorda Bay, a little bit up the coast and inland as well. And when you add all that up, you sort of see our area of concern. And this is, again, based on some modeling that was done this morning. Several models go into this product. And a common feature there is some significant rainfall in the area shown there, including certainly Matagorda, Wharton, Jackson County, on into Brazoria County, and still some significant rains a bit west as well, including Galveston, Fort Bend, maybe even further north into Colorado County. And given the rain that has already fallen, especially down near Matagorda Bay, this additional rainfall we think will lead to some flash flooding, especially in the narrow zone where we have that heavier band, and we can get several inches to a foot in that narrow zone. We did see something like this happen down the coast in the Rockport area yesterday, where many areas didn't get that much rain, but in that one persistent feeder band, there was very significant flooding. So that's our real concern tonight and tomorrow morning. This product here is the excessive rainfall outlook from the Weather Prediction Center, intending to show the areas of greatest concern for flash flooding. And you see this fits with what we've talked before. We've got Matagorda, Jackson, Wharton, and Brazoria in there in a moderate risk. So that's fairly significant. And then in these yellow counties too, we can get those higher rain rates and perhaps some flash flooding as well. But the greater concern is in the moderate risk area and areas immediately adjacent to that. Can't rule out an isolated tornado as well. That's certainly not the main concern. The more significant threat we think is from the heavy rain. But in the areas in dark green here, Storm Prediction Center has issued a a marginal risk area there, which would imply perhaps some isolated severe, probably tornadoes. But again, those would tend to be short-lived, more likely along bands, and not the primary threat with this system. So finally, for this portion, just to sum up, we are expecting that slow-moving band of heavy rain setting up tonight, continuing into tomorrow morning. There's potential for up to a foot of rain in that band. Areas outside the band will get rain, but not nearly as much. And as I mentioned, we did have a similar type of band in the Rockport area yesterday that caused some very severe localized flooding. So we need to monitor the radar, see where that band sets up, and that's the area that could have this significant flood impact. Still uncertainty exactly where it will set up, and so that's why we'll be monitoring the radar tonight, trying to get a better handle on that so we can really zero in on an area. But you do have potential for flash flooding anywhere in the watch area, not just those counties I mentioned above. Maybe further east into Brazoria, even Galveston, up into Fort Bend, and maybe even Colorado County, although they're not in the watch right now. And based on the forecast rainfall, there is potential for flooding of several rivers and tributaries, and I'm going to have Katie speak on that next. As far as confidence goes, we are fairly confident that there will be a heavier band setting up tonight. What we're not confident of is exactly where it will be. You know, will it be over near those counties, near Matagorda Bay? Will it be a little further up the coast or down the coast? Those are all possibilities. So overall, the rainfall forecast is highly uncertain, but we do think some place is going to get a lot of rain and have some flood impacts, generally down in those areas. So at this point, Katie, why don't you unmute yourself and you could speak to the rivers.
Great, thanks, Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So currently right now, if you were to take a look at our AHEP's page, you would see that we've got widespread current stages around action stage. So we've got several of our basins that are currently, already experiencing higher water levels. So with rainfall on top of that, we're expecting to see additional rises. That's going to be pushing us into the minor category for a lot of locations. And some locations might even see moderate to major flooding. So we'll talk about that. So the current forecast that you would see if you go on our website uses 24 hours of forecasted rainfall. Now, that was updated as of 1 o'clock this afternoon. So that captures the majority of this event. If you were to take a look at those forecasts, you've got the image right here. You can see that we're expecting widespread rises to action stage and minor river flood stage. Mostly that's going to be around the Lavaca, Navidad river basins, as well as the San Bernard River. We are expecting major river flooding on the Tres Palacios, especially since they had just gotten hit pretty good over the past 24 hours. This does not include additional rainfall that would be going into Saturday morning, but again, that's not going to be a make or break scenario. Most of the rainfall is going to be depicted within this next 24-hour window. If you go to the next slide, what I wanted to do is I wanted to show you what are some potential scenarios as far as if you see those heavier bands set up over these particular sites. So this isn't going to be exactly what's going to happen. This is kind of giving you a reasonable worst case scenario of what to expect since there is that uncertainty of where those heavier bands are going to set up. So if you were to take a look at the next 48 hours and you were to take a look at some of our probabilistic values as far as, increasing the amount of rainfall, going more on a worst case scenario side, you would see that we could potentially be seeing minor to moderate river flooding on Lavaca, Navidad, Tres Palacios, and San Bernard, where the main differences would be Tres Palacios, even though we're currently forecasting major, it would actually be well into major flooding. On the San Bernard, instead of just seeing the rises to action and minor flooding, you would potentially see minor to major river flooding as shown there. on the image on the left. And then on the Lavaca Navidad, you would be seeing anywhere from about action to moderate flooding over near Edna. So this is just kind of giving you an idea. If you were to see some of those heavier rainfall amounts over these particular sites with those heavier bands over the next 48 hours, mainly 24-hour period, this is kind of the worst case scenario. And then the timing as far as these forecasts and when these would crest, where you get these heavier bands, of course, you're going to be seeing river flooding occurring starting in the overnight hours, but the cresting would be sometime tomorrow midday all the way into Saturday morning and even Saturday afternoon. And then, of course, we would see, the recession of these going into the latter part of the weekend. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to Dan and see if any of you have any questions.